مساء النور. مرحبا بكم بمركز الإيطالي للآثار التابع للمعهد الإيطالي الثقافي القاهرة. أنا اسمي جوزيبي شيشري، أنا المسؤول عن المركز، وأنا سعيد جدا النهارده عن الترحيب إلى الحضور الكرام وإلى الدكتورة ريم باسيوني، كاتبة مشهورة جدا لا تحتاج إلى أي تقديم يعني. وضيف ثاني هو القنصل الشرفي الإيطالي بالأقصر الدكتور فرانسيس أمين، بس هو النهارده موجود معنا مش زي قنصل شرفي لإيطاليا، بس زي يعني عاشق تاريخ مصر الحديثة، هو يعني اللي بيجمع يعني مذكرات أو وثائق أو أي يعني نقطة من نقاط التاريخ المصري بتاع القرن 19 والقرن العشرين. واحنا نشكر الدكتور فرانسيس أمين لسبب خاص، بس السبب ده هو اللي بيقول بعد دقيقتين ان شاء الله. I'm very happy, very proud to have all you as our honored guests today. Also on behalf of the director of the Institute, the Italian Institute of Culture, Dr. Maurizio Guerra, and the vice director, Dr. Felipe Tangelo. As you know, the Italian Archaeological Center that they have the honor to coordinate is part of the Italian Institute of Culture, which is part of the Italian Embassy, so it's part of the Italian presence in Egypt. And actually, Italian presence in Egypt is somehow the main topic that we are going to discuss today with our distinguished guest, Dr. Reem Bassiouney. She's a very famous writer, and I will not steal your time by any presentation. Also because we were both victims of the traffic jam today, so we're a little bit late, and we don't want you to wait longer. In the same time, let me speak just a few words about this lecture as regarding in the series of lectures that we are organizing here in the Italian Archaeological Center. As you know, for a couple of years there was no person responsible, so we are now trying to restart. And we have prepared a series of lectures with different themes, different cycles. The lecture that we are going to listen to with Dr. Reem, actually meets two of our cycles. One cycle is about the Italian presence in Egypt in 19th and 20th century, and the other one is heritage and religions. Because the two personalities that Reem Bassiouney is going to evoke with us today, the architect Mario Rossi, who's an Italian architect who lived in Egypt for many years in the first half of the 20th century, and the famous Sheikh Abbas al-Mursi, that was an Andalusian master but settled in Egypt and became the successor of the great Sheikh Abu Hassan al-Shazili as the master of the Tariqa Shazliya. These two personalities are somehow linked by a special friendship, a friendship between two souls or two spirits across 700 years, across 7 centuries. This special friendship is one of the main topics of one of the great novels by Reem Bassiouney, Mario of Abbas, which invites us to reflect about the nature of art, the nature of friendship, and the importance of spiritual life 700 years ago and nowadays. Before listening to Reem Bassiouney, just let me introduce you to our honorary consul, Dr. Francis Amin, honorary consul of Luxor. Francis Amin is a great knower and a great lover of a special gift, a surprise. He brought with him two until now unknown drawings by Mario Rossi that are shown in the showcases outside, so you can see them when we go out. And I wanted him just to tell us a few words about this, and then we will give the floor to Dr. Reem Bassiouney. Thank you very much.
مساء الخير. أنا لقيت نفسي ضيف وفوجئت إن الدكتور جوزيف بيقول تعالى نتكلم، فما حضرتش كلام، لكن طبعا وجودي مع قامات كبيرة زي الدكتورة ريم وقصتها الجميلة، مش جميلة، قصتها ملحمتها الكبيرة اللي أنا أول ما قريتها رحت محوش شوية فلوس واشتريت نسخ وابتديت أوزع على الحبايب يعني. قريتها كتير، ففي القصة بتقول أن ترسم على الورق فهذا إبداع، وأن تنفذ ما رسمت فهذه حياة. جملة جميلة يعني استوقفتني هذه الجملة كما استوقفني ماريو روسي. أنا بهتم بتاريخ الإيطاليين في مصر، وطبعا لاشاك ومن أتى بعده فيروتشي وماريو روسي، لكن أنا ما أعرفش إيه قصتي مع ماريو روسي. أنا ما بروحلوش، هو اللي بيجيلي. أنا فوجئت مجموعة نيجاتيفات في البيت، وببص كده فيلا في منتهى الجمال والانتيريور العربي فيه إبداع غير عادي، والنوافير والسلالم واللوحات. فطلبت من الدكتورة ميرفت زوجتي اللي هي متخصصة في النيجاتيفات والكلام ده، اطبعي لي وريني، عايز أشوف طلع فيلا عطا عفيفي إيه اللي عملها ماريو روسي. الانتيريور مش حاجة من بره. فأنا زهقت، جالي ألبوم لمسجد بدور فيه لقيته مسجد الزمالك برضه ماريو روسي. في زيارة من سنوات قليلة لصديق اللي هو حسن كامي، المطرب حسن كامي أو المغني الأوبرالي الله يرحمه حسن كامي، قال لي أنا هديك حاجة حلوة، في رسمتين حلوين، أحلى رسم شفته لحد بيرسم أرابيسك وآثار عربية وأسلوب عربي. فاشتريتهم منه وروحت البيت ببص في واحدة لقيت بالإيطالي إهداء لمصطفى فهمي بيك، ومين اللي أهداهم له؟ ماريو روسي. يا نهار أسود، دول رسمتين لماريو روسي. أروح أرجع له بسرعة لأن أنا سبت الورق الفاضي، قلت له مش عايزه، لا ده في ريحة ماريو روسي واحتمال بصماته، هاته. ففي علاقة غريبة، ماريو روسي بيجي عندي. وطبعا أنا يعني عملي الأساسي مرشد سياحي. لما بروح اسكندرية وأقف قدام مسجد المرسي أبو العباس، بصوا الجمال والإبداع والإيطالي. بعد ما قريت القصة قلت لا ده أنا هلبس شيخ وأقعد أحكي اللي في الكتاب، لأن بالفعل انتقلت الأشياء من أمور مادية وشرح بسيط إلى أمور روحانية وإلى قراءة في العمق وفي القلب. الدكتورة ريم اسمك معروف بالعربي معناه، إنما الدكتور جوزيف بيقول أنا متخصص تاريخ حديث، وأنا أصلا دراستي تاريخ قديم مصري قديم. فطبعا ريم باللغة المصرية القديمة معناها إيه؟ ها؟ لا ده معناها الدمعة، والدمعة التي هي دمعة إيزيس، وحين دمعت إيزيس خلق العالم، خلقت مصر والعالم من دموع إيزيس. لذلك في معبد فيلة عاملين لوحة كده ومسمينها الدمعة، يعني دمعة إيزيس. إذا الدمعة اللي هي الروح والكيان خلقت العالم. أنا بشكر الدكتور جوزيف إن هو أتاح لي هذه الفرصة أن أتحدث، وطبعا ده يعني تكريم كبير ليا ما استحقوش، بس أنا لما عرفت إن الدكتورة ريم جاية فكلمت جوزيف، أنا عندي رسمتين، قال لي على طول تجيبهم ونحطهم، لابد إن نضع شيء كهذا تكريما لشخصية كبيرة لا تجعلنا نظرف الدموع بل نبتسم وتبعث الأمل مدى الأيام. ألف شكر. شكرا.
دكتورة ريم عشان الناس online. Sorry, I'm leaving the place to Dr. Reem, and no, I forgot. We should talk in English because there are many people online that are following also from Italy, and maybe not all of them knows Arabic. Thank you very much again.
Good evening. First of all, I really cannot thank enough Giuseppe for this wonderful opportunity, and Francis for what he has been saying. I mean, it really touched my heart, I have to say. And I am very grateful for this wonderful opportunity. And I would just want to repeat what Giuseppe has been saying about friendship. And let's start with friendship, because that's very important. I do believe, since I work on history, that you can have friends that do not live at the same time, and that you've never really met face to face. But you felt them with your heart, you read their words, and they touched you somehow. And I know that because I think I have a lot of friends that are not really living with us now, but perhaps have lived 700 years ago, sometimes 1,000 years ago, so it really depends. One of my friends is Mary Rossi, and perhaps one of the very recent friends in that sense, since it hasn't been, approximately 100 years perhaps. And my relationship to Mary Rossi started with his architecture, but also with this curiosity that I had to understand him much more. He's someone who has a lot of sincerity, who loves what he's doing. He has passion, and it's passion that makes great art. And it's actually passion that makes life. If we repeat what Francis has been saying about creating art and actually realizing your art, that's actually creating life. So I believe that if you have this kind of sincerity, then you're able to touch a lot of hearts. In the same way that Mary Rossi, 100 years later, has touched me in different ways. And in the same way that Abbas and Morsi has touched Mary Rossi and touched me in different ways. Italians in Egypt has been one of the topics that really interested me from the very beginning, since I come from Alexandria. And since I've been studying, let me start from the very, very beginning. When I left Alexandria at the age of 23 to study at the University of Oxford. At the age of 23, when I left Alexandria to study at the University of Oxford, it was not a coincidence that my teacher, who was teaching me translation and translation theory, asked me to go and read Ungaretti. And then he told me he comes from the same city that you come from. I went very enthusiastically and started reading Ungaretti. And the poem that I read for Ungaretti was about Alexandria. I don't think this is a coincidence. It's only much later that I discovered that Ungaretti left Egypt almost at the same age that I left. He left Alexandria almost at the same time, but at a different time, but at the same age. Not only that, but he comes from the same quarters in Alexandria where I used to go. So if I go to Cleopatra, the marketplace there, I know that Ungaretti has been walking in the same streets at one point, almost having a very similar experience, which is basically the experience of a lot of Alexandrians, capturing the moment, trying to capture the moment of your youth, the moment of your happiness, the city that you remember, which perhaps does not exist anymore. So in that sense, I think we both shared a lot. Perhaps I should start with Ungaretti and tell you a little bit about his experience in Egypt. Ungaretti lived in Alexandria, but his friends lived in Max. Do you know where Max is?
Yeah.
Suburb of Alexandria. At the time of Ungaretti, it was a desert. Now it's not a desert anymore. When he went to see his friends in the desert of Max, his friend told him that Alexandria is actually much older than Alexander the Great. Alexandria has existed for years and years. And so he asked his friend for proof of that. He told him that under the sea there is the lost city and a port that has been there for a long time. And this is what Ungaretti has been saying about this visit with his friend. They lived outside Alexandria, in the middle of the desert, at Mex. They spoke to me of a port, a submerged port that must have preceded Ptolemaic times, proving that Alexandria was a port even before Alexander, that even before his time it was a city. We know nothing about this. And now listen to this, because I really felt it, and when I read it for the first time, I was in tears. This is what Alberti said about Alexandria. My city destroys and annihilates itself from instant to instant. How can we find out about its origins if nothing at all survives? Even of what happened a moment ago. We know nothing about it. There is no other sign of it than that port preserved in the depth of the sea. That sea, which is the only document handed down to us from every age of Alexandria. So this is someone who was really in love with the city in the same way that the city never actually left my heart. That's why the novel Mario and Abu Abbas actually ends with a poem about Alexandria by Ungaretti. Again, a poem that reflects very much how I felt about the city. Let's go back to Italians in Egypt, and perhaps for people who study literature here, and I know that we have professors of English literature, and we have some students of English literature, and we go to Shakespeare's A Merchant of Venice. The Merchant of Venice had a miserable time in his trade, and the reason for the miserable time he had was the downfall of the Mamluks in Egypt. So that Egypt and Venice have been related for years and years because of the trade between them. That's why we have a lot of traders that went to Egypt and wrote chronicles about Egyptian life at the time of the Mamluks. And this was perhaps the beginning of my passion for everything Italian, other than the fact that I'm Alexandrian and there are lots of Italian things in Alexandria, but also historically, looking at the chronicles of Italians who came to Egypt and trying to understand them. I wrote about it in my novel, Fountain of the Drowning, if you read about it. About the chronicles of Italians coming to trade in Egypt and how the Portuguese, discovering the Cape of Good Hope has somehow influenced Venice and led to a lot of problems in Venice. But it's actually my interest in Sufism that brought me to one very interesting character, Mary Rossi. Mary Rossi is an architect, but he's also an artist. He's someone that feels for everything he does. He does everything with passion, as we said. Now, if you read about Mary Rossi, and you read about Abu Abbas and Morsi, and then you go and visit the mosque of Abu Abbas and Morsi in Alexandria, you cannot but see that there is a friendship between these two people. And it's not just an architect building a building that he was asked to build. There is a friendship. There is also an architect that had understood very much the character of the person is building the mosque for. And it is no coincidence that Alexandrians up until today speak about this mosque as the most important and prominent monument in all of Alexandria. Alexandrians did not realize that Morsi is not the name of their sheikh, but actually the place where he comes from, Murcia in Spain. So if you think about it, Abu Abbas comes from Spain, Mary Rossi comes from Italy, not very far from each other. They both end up in Alexandria, building something in Alexandria. It's the contact between humans. This kind of continuous relationships of harmony and of giving and of love that makes our life worth living, especially at a time when there's so much pain all around us. It's very important to understand that this love, this is the key word, to understand humanity. And this is perhaps the most important concept in Sufism, the idea of love. That love starts everything, and with love, everything is built and everything continues. And I think it is with love that Mary Rossi has built his mosque for Morsi Abu Abbas. So let's go to the story of Ahmed Abu Abbas, the young boy, again at the age of 20, who left his home in Murcia, Spain, with his parents in a ship going from Spain with the idea that they are going to Mecca for Hajj, but never reaching anywhere except the shores of Tunisia with their ship drowning and sinking, and there are only two people who survived. Ahmed, or Morsi, Abu Abbas al-Morsi, and his brother. Two orphans at the age of 20 find themselves in Tunisia, not their country, and there Ahmed, or Abu Abbas, will meet with a Shafii and start into the path of Sufism. And it is about 700 years later that Mario will actually build him the mosque. So until that time, there was a small mosque that was built in Alexandria for Abu Abbas. When he died, there was very little that was actually built at the time. So we may think that this mosque has been there for a long time, but it hasn't. Now, the way that I wrote or structured my novel Mario and Abu Abbas was the idea that I was traveling and I met Christina, an Italian, an Egyptian Italian, who was telling me about how she met Mary Rossi. And this is how I start my novel. The story is told by Christina, but it's also told by Mary Rossi, but it's also told by Abu Abbas al-Morsi, and all the friends of Abu Abbas al-Morsi. So we have this kind of virtual reality in which Abu Abbas al-Morsi is sitting in his mosque, talking to Mario and the friends and his students about his life. And it's as if a friend is talking to a friend. And friendship is about conversation. And there is no better conversation than what you understand about people from books. And so this is how it all started. If we think about the concept of Sufism, since it's one of the ideas that we're talking about today, Sufism is really about purifying your heart, about facing yourself with all kinds of problems that you may have, but also facing yourself with what's wrong with yourself and trying to make yourself a better person. It's about yourself first and foremost. That's why for a lot of Sufis, you have to know yourself in order to know God. If you don't know yourself, you cannot know God. It's this recognition of love that makes your life worth living. And so the message that Abu Abbas brings to humanity is a message that is full of tolerance and full of love. As an old Sufi, Junaid, said, for a Sufi has to become like rain. Rain falls on everyone, and it does not differentiate. It does not differentiate people by color, by religion, or by where they come from. Rain does not differentiate, and you have to be like drops of rain. A very wonderful concept about humanity. So he brought to Alexandria such a wonderful concept, Abu Abbas, that Alexandrians forgot where he came from. For them, Abu Abbas is the epitome, the symbol of Alexandria. When they swear by his name. They even forgot that Murcia or Morsi comes from this, and they thought it's his name. So for Alexandrians, Abu Abbas is Alexandria. And you know the very famous song, Al-Fatha Abu Abbas, Iskandariya al-Tanis. Now I would like to tell you some good news, which is basically that Mario Abu Abbas has been translated into English, and it will come out mid-2025, hopefully in English, by Dar al-Arab. And today, for the first time, you have this preview of parts of the translation. So I would like to read to you some parts from the translation, and the parts that I want to read today are the inauguration of the mosque of Abu Abbas at the time of King Farouk, where Mario was there and King Farouk was there. Mario's life is not all nice and wonderful. Mario Rossi lived in Egypt at the time of World War II. He was put in prison for 4 years in Fayette, and while in prison, a character like Mario Rossi would not just sit still or be sad and despair. But what do you think he would do? Draw and build. So even in his prison, he started building churches, he started drawing, he created a theater for everyone in prison. But you have to remember that this man, who was chief architect in Wazarat al-Awqaf at the time, that this man, at the time of the war, lost all his money and his job and was put in prison. So we have a very difficult situation for someone who's a father and a husband. And yet, what did he make out of this miserable situation? Something really beautiful. He was building, he was creating. And perhaps this is really the main idea of Sufism and of Abbas and Morsi, that you can make out of a situation that seems so desperate and out of such unfairness something very beautiful. So this is Mario talking, and of course you'll see that he always speaks to Abbas as if he's there with him. Okay? I sat there, this is Mario, I sat there passionately, counting down the hours until the Abbas mosque would be opened. That day, I encountered him. He had been talking to me for a while, but I had never gone to the place where he was looking. King Farouk gave me a smile and treated me with affection. He greeted me in Italian, and I greeted him in Arabic. He looked all around, raised his head to look up at the ceiling. The light spread over all the multicolored sections, and the shapes were mirrored in the mosque courtyard. The reflected sky poured through the side portals, and sunbeams of wood cascaded from the crevices. I like the general sight in the courtyard, the king said in Italian. I hope Abbas and Morsi likes it too, I muttered in reply in Arabic, and he heard me. His smile was a blend of surprise and admiration. Your Arabic is much better than my Italian, he said. He may have thought that I had lost my mind, or that I was involved in my work. I had forgotten who was still with us and who was far away. He did not comment. Newspapers wrote about the mosque, and people spoke about the biggest mosque in Alexandria. It has cost £138,000. His Majesty King Farouk the First had opened it. When the royal visit came to an end, I was duly proud of what I had been. I walked out of the mosque respectfully behind the king, but at night I went back to the same spot and grabbed hold of the same pillars, all on that very same night. The guard gave me a dubious look. This is my mosque, I told him. I built it. Don't you remember the king's visit today? I was with him. He welcomed me somehow hesitantly, then left me and went outside. That was exactly what I wanted, to be left alone with Abbas. Ahmed, I spontaneously told Abbas, do you see where we're going to meet on future occasions? No, don't tell me. It's as though I already know. Greetings to the Murthian, between the waves of the sea, the drizzle in Alexandria, and the cracks in ancient buildings. Every second, your name is repeated all around me, and I stay silent. If I speak and say that you're my friend, they will all think I lost my mind. If I told them I speak to you, they would think I lost my tongue. Come, let me shake your hand and rub your shoulder. I'll tell you, brother, what time has come to me. So this is part of the conversation that we have between Mario and Abbas, and in which Abbas tells him his whole life story. Now, I would like to speak about myself here towards the end of the novel, when I speak about my relationship to Christina, the Egyptian Italian who left Egypt. And this is the last scene between me and Christina after she told me the story of Mario and Abbas. Through my friendship with Christina, I learned that sometimes weeping can be caused by our own weakness, when we cling to a moment of illusionary happiness. I had thought that she was weeping for her love, but she was actually crying for a city that had nestled inside her heart and then slipped away. I went back to Egypt looking for a particular poet that Christina had mentioned to me, named Ungaretti. Separated from me by 100 years, and yet his words could still strike the heart. Like me, he had spent 20 years in Alexandria and then left it. Like me, he had searched for remnants of the ancient city buried in the depths of the sea, remains of the old lighthouse, and vestiges of the life of old. As he left the port, still searching for his own self, he had not realized that he was searching for had not never left. He did not realize that what he was searching for had never left. At the time, I told myself that even though the city and its inhabitants might have changed, the sea was still refusing to submit to its will. It was as though authority was talking to me. And in his verses, he said, this is a translation of the verse of Converti, I know a city that is filled with sunlight each day. All creations rejoice. I have seen my city disappear and fade away. But as it disappears, it still leaves behind a handful of light suspended into the infinite air. I still repeat these words of his. I have received a story from connected breaths scattered all around me, but I have finished with them only to find myself in the company of other stories that I have not told. I have been searching like someone following the traces of water, someone who whenever a pool looms on the horizon, rushes towards it. I immediately went to visit the mosque of Abbas in Morsi. By his tomb, I found hopes scattered all around, mothers holding their children's hands and telling them about observation and disease, and the father praising God, spending an hour or two sitting in the sheikh's company. Here is a lover, pining for his beloved. A perplexed soul in search of house and homeland. Hands were extended to feed the poor, as though the entire world was made up of them and for them. I read his name, already knowing it. We have a friendship, although it is one I do not deserve. Maybe it is just that I am not suited to it. Then I clambered up the staircase to the mosque and looked up the roof that Mariu had built. Mariu was there, and so was Abbas. Can place overcome time, I wonder? Or is it rather that the spirit is free beyond any time and place? We have all met here, each in his own time and with different commissions, and yet both have banged on doors. Some of these doors have opened, but others have refused to yield to anyone. The time must come for me to bang at the door if I can. I have been doing research on Rossi and his history, the artist's emotions, and the lover's tribulation. As part of my research, I have encountered people whom I have never expected to meet. As I asked questions about Mariu, new doors opened up, and I heard stories that were totally unexpected. My mouth gasped in amazement at what I was hearing about the vicissitudes of humanity, changing destinies, and the deceptions of time. I heard one story after another and buried myself in details that sometimes left me even more baffled. Research itself involves lengthy tales that I will recount when the time is right. Today, I'm spending my time with Mariu and Abbas. I can hear his voice, Abbas, as it resounds through the space. You are the addressee, so listen. Thank you so much. So if you have any questions, we have time for that.
The books is available. The books is available here.
Oh, sorry. I think Basma here. She has 2 copies of my book, The Diver, I think, and Mariam and Abbas, my 2 Sufi novels.
I reserve one, yes.
I think she has 2 copies. And if you would like to be on our WhatsApp group, please give your number to Basma. She's wearing green. Okay.
So thank you very much, Dr. Reem. And of course, there are many suggestions, many topics that you will go. So I guess there will be a large debate. So we can start with the questions and answers, if you like. Dr. Rania.
Dr. Reem, of course it's a pleasure. We went to school together, we went to university together, and you look the same.
Thank you so much.
And the talent is amazing. And I have a question that is coming from simply because of you went to Oxford. This is the dream. You made it, I promise you. Can you tell us the impact of Alexandria on yourself, the impact of the English department and professors, and how did this push you forward in the Sufi direction, which is, again, this is just a personal opinion. As if it is part of all Alexandrians, it's part of what we were exposed to, especially in university, especially in UGC. So I would like you to maybe elaborate on this.
So you graduated when? If I could ask you this question.
I'm 3 years older than you are, so.
You're much younger, you look much younger. So we don't need to say that.
Speech days and
And the name?
Daniel Hilali.
I think I know them.
Prefects and the whole story.
Shall I have one? Thank you so much, Dalia, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about my experience. I think I was very lucky to be educated at the English department in Alexandria, at also the time of the great professors of Alexandria who have all mostly have been educated in the UK and the US, in Cambridge and in other places, Birmingham. I think, first of all, what I have learned really is how to think and how to analyze and how to live life. I mean, I've learned a lot from the English department. Thinking critically, not accepting everything you read. Perhaps if they did not teach me this, I would not have written The Diver by Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, because I would not have appreciated his call for us to think critically. It's the same call that I heard from my professors in Alexandria a long time ago. I think my experience with Alexandria and Abbas and Morsi is that when we were young, my mother, if we were not feeling very well, or if we were sad, she would take us there. And then she would read Al-Fatiha for Abbas and Morsi, and we would leave. And she should not do anything else. But the place was very nice. It was serene. There was lots of, it was calm. It was a very quiet place. And as a child, I really liked it. However, as a child, I did not know that Abbas and Morsi is actually a Sufi. I didn't even know that. The only thing I knew about him is that he's an important sheikh, right? And that he's buried in Alexandria and people go and visit the place. I did not know anything about his life. It's only much later that when I started reading about Sufism, that I discovered who he is. And I don't think it's a coincidence, because he's someone who did not want to be known. He's someone who worked very silently. He was someone who was very self-effacing. He did not really want people to know him very much. So I think it was somehow intentional. So yeah, definitely, I think Alexandria and the fact that I was writing about my city made this novel something very special for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So there is another question, and I see many others. Just let me greet some of the friends that are with us today, not only Dr. Arani that already spoke, but among the many friends I would like to mention someone who is with us in the room, that is Dr. Arturas Galindas, the ambassador of Lithuania to Egypt, who is a very good friend of Italy, because he also was an ambassador to Italy and is a very good Italian speaker, by the way. And Dr. Marwa Fauzi, who is following us from Italy now. She is the cultural attaché of Egypt in Rome. So now I'm a Roman in Cairo and an Italian in Cairo, and she's an Egyptian in Rome in this moment. So many thanks, Dr. Marwa, and if you have any question, of course, you and all the people online, you are most welcome. Thank you very much, and we move to the second question.
For the remarkable journey as always. I'm curious about the incarceration of Mario. Is it documented why he was incarcerated? Why he was put in jail? Is it known? Thank you.
Perhaps you can answer this.
And how prolific was it? How prolific was the period? It's not uncommon for scholars.
I think the Italian historian will answer that question.
I guess it was not a problem between Egyptians and Mechanics, but between the British and Italians. because of war. He was an Italian, so Italian male people who were in age for military were more or less in the same, all in the same condition. So, but Reem can tell you more.
Because we love the Italian people.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think it's very important to highlight that the reason why he was in prison was actually the British occupation at the time, not Egyptians, because the Egyptians were very sympathetic with Italians and Greeks at the time. And the story goes that the British thought that he owned a radio, and we should not have done that. So they put him in prison for 4 years, so it's not really a very good reason. But it was something that happened to all Italian males, as Juliet was saying. They were put there in Fayette in a kind of camp until the war was over, and then they went back home. But again, they lost all their money. So he started again. He lost his job. He lost his money. He started all over again. But he was incredibly successful even after that period. So it's a character that we really could all learn from.
Thank you very much. And also, there is another colleague online, Dr. Ralf Bodenstein, who is the Vice Director of the German Institute, Archaeological Institute in Cairo.
Thank you. I was wondering, for us modern Egyptians, we imagine that Abbas al-Mursi was always famous in Alexandria. But from what you said now, I'm wondering, was there a time when he was not as famous in Alexandria? Because I know that in the same enclave, in the same area, there are other sheikhs buried there. And there are small shrines for the different sheikhs. And if that's the case, do you think that this mosque was instrumental in making him that influential and that associated with Alexandria in your research? And also a question too about the sources of your research. Was it difficult to find information about Mario, or what sources did you use?
I have to thank all my Italian friends for actually providing a lot of sources about Mario. So that was one thing. Actually, I have an Italian student who even provided me the contact with the family of Mario in Italy. So I was very lucky with the. I think I'm always very lucky actually with finding these sources. Yeah, that was really fascinating. But let me go to, because there are very important questions. Now, Abbas has always been extraordinarily famous in Alexandria. Since his lessons about Sufism, he was of course the disciple of Shazli, who was extraordinarily important in Egypt. And Shazli is a Sufi, a very important Sufi. If we think about Sufis as having a hierarchy, then he would be very high up in the hierarchy. And then we have his disciple would be Abbas al-Mursi, would continue with the same, let's say, the method of thinking of the Shazlis in Alexandria. And at the time, Sufism was extraordinarily prominent in Egypt, actually would mostly be teaching religion by Sufi scholars. So he was very famous. But exactly the history would be that when he died, it was a couple of years later that a merchant decided that he would like to bury himself near the important sheikh. And that was very common at the time of the Mamluks. So the Mamluks decided that they want to be buried near Sufis because they feel that this will somehow be a blessing. So he decided to build a small mosque for him to be buried beside him. And he buried himself beside him. And then a bit later, the Mamluks built another mosque. And that was the mosque that was there. And it was torn down, and Mario rebuilt the mosque again. And it took him 16 years. 16 years, because the war was in between, and he was imprisoned in between. And by the way, if you look at history, this is not uncommon for very important places to take a long time, and for people in the middle to have problems. It's the same with Sultan Hassan Mosque that I wrote about in the Mamluk trilogy. It also took long time, and in between there was a famine and a plague, and a lot of things that happened that stopped the mosque. And then it continued, and it became extraordinarily important and famous. So he was very famous himself, but the mosque was very big, and it was the biggest mosque in Alexandria when it was built by Mary. Before that, it was one of the small mosques, but the person was very famous.
So it's a rebuild, not renovation.
It's a rebuild.
Rebuild.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
forward to May 2025 to have it translated to English. And my question is, to which extent building this mosque, to which extent this relation between Mario Rossi and the Sheikh influenced Mario Rossi's further works? I mean, you cannot, you get to this, because you were dealing with this kind of people, the ones who lived centuries ago, cannot leave you without influence of them. So how did it influence Mario Rossi's further works after he finished the mosque? Thank you.
We have a specialist architecture that I feel like I shouldn't be talking. Is there any specialist here who would like to answer the question?
Like,
Or I can answer.
yes, I mean, I guess that if there is anyone who wants to contribute, he or she is most welcome. In the same time, there are many ways to approach figures like such a figure as Mario Rossi, and we are going to make other meetings on Mario Rossi next year, and hopefully in the following year also in the following year, more focusing on history of architecture. But we wanted to start from a different perspective, a spiritual perspective, and I guess that if I'm not mistaken, the question of His Excellency was actually more on this spiritual kind of influence, so how this spiritual influence could explain or could mark the development of his work. So I guess that you can answer also from a spiritual point of view, you don't need to be a specialist about that.
Let me say the words of Mario himself. So Mario said that he has built in Egypt 200 mosques. Do you imagine? 200. That's a lot. So he has built 200 mosques in Egypt, and he said none of the 200, none of them is exactly the same. So he managed to create something new in every single one of the 200. That's what a genius, That's a genius, It's exact, and that's what he said. I do believe what he's saying. So if you look at Alexandria, for example, you can look at three main mosques in Alexandria: Al-Qa'id Ibrahim, very famous, Rossi Mosque, and Abu Abbas. And the three are actually quite different. I personally think his masterpiece is Abu Abbas, but this is my own bias, of course. Some other people will say no, but Rossi is also extraordinarily important, or his mosques in Cairo, are also very important. He also did some mosques outside Egypt as well. So, and he did some churches. So he's someone who is very prolific in the sense of the sheer number of things that he built. That does not even include the different villas and palaces that he built. And because your question actually reminded me to answer one of your questions about his time in prison. Do you know what he used to do in prison? He used to draw and work with the pashas of Egypt. If they wanted to have a palace or a villa built, he would actually draw the villa and sell his drawings. But how could he do this? Because the British would not allow him to be working, right? So he would hide his drawings in the shoes that his wife would take home. So this is a very creative. So he would actually hide his drawings in these shoes, and I was very lucky to find letters by Mario Rossi to his wife and his mother, and by him, and letters that his mother and wife wrote to him. So in one of his letters, he's explaining to his wife what the villa should look like and where to find the drawings. And he's saying, when you open the bag that I gave you, you'll find in the shoe the drawings hidden there. And he wrote this letter while he was in prison. So he has a sense of humor as well as as a very creative mind.
There is no flash memory at that time.
So thank you very much. There is also a question online from Dr. Marwa Fauzi, and before opening our microphone, let me greet another friend who joined us, Dr. Maurizio Barnaba, who is the Vice Ambassador of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, and very good friend of the Italian Archaeological Center. So please, Dr. Cecil, can you? Okay, it's okay. Please, Dr. Marwa, you can talk if you like. You can speak if you like. No, it's still muted. I guess that Dr. Cecil should be able from there or. Chiedo scusa, professoressa, non so se riesce a fare lei a mute, eccolo, no, sì. Ok, adesso il microfono è aperto, now the microphone is open.
Eccoci qua, مساء الخير. مساء الخير. Good evening everybody. يعني اسمحوا لي أتحدث باللغة العربية أولاً ثم بالإيطالية. شكراً جزيلاً للدكتور جوزيبي تشيتشي على المحاضرات القيمة اللي بينظمها، يعني أنا سعيدة جداً بيها وبإلقائها، وشكراً على الدعوة الكريمة لحضور ومساء اليوم، لأنه بجد أنا سعيدة جداً 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 ومنورانا يا دكتورة ريم. تسلم. ويعني انا ما حضرتش اللقاء من الاول، بس الجزء اللي سمعته كان يعني شيق جدا، وعجبتني جدا جدا فكره ربط الشخصيات على مدى الزمان. يعني كم من مره بنشعر ان احنا يعني بنشعر بالألفة مع ارواح عاشت منذ سنين ومرت في مصر وفي الاسكندريه تحديدا. فاعتقد ان دي فكره يعني مهمه جدا وبتغيب عن كثير من الكتاب. فانا بحيي حضرتك جدا على تناول هذه الفكره في الروايه، وطبعا يعني كمان انا شفت في الروايه في الثلاثيه اللي بعد كده حضرتك برضه تحدثتي عن شخصيه جوهر الصقلي. يمكن مش كتير من الايطاليين يعرفوا من هو مؤسس القاهره، فيعني برضه ده اعتقد يعني شيء يحسب لحضرتك جدا، واحنا نفخر بيه جدا انه الروايه المصريه المعاصره تتناول مثل هذه الموضوعات. ويعني احنا فعلا يعني في معشر الايطاليين والمهتمين بالدراسات الايطاليه، يا بختنا بحضرتك بابداعات مثل هذه. يعني اتمنى ان شاء الله في القريب العاجل يكون في تراجم للايطاليه، لو كان فعلا ما فيش لسه للروايات ان شاء الله معرض فيها اكثر فاكثر القارئ الايطالي. اكيد من عينينا، ده يشرفني بجد فعلا. ويعني شكرا مره ثانيه على المحاضره الجميله، ويعني اسمحي لي اشكركم باختصار شديد جدا. Grazie mille professor Cecere per aver organizzato questo convegno e altri convegni che sono tutti interessanti. Ho ringraziato molto la professoressa, innanzitutto perché non la conoscevo di persona, quindi è già un'occasione per me per conoscerla. Mi dispiace che non riesco ad attivare il video, comunque io vi posso vedere e mi fa molto piacere. Poi mi ha attirato molto l'idea dell'amicizia, diciamo dell'armonia che nasce fra persone che non sono state coetanee, che hanno vissuto diversi periodi del tempo, così come è stato trattato il rapporto e il legame molto particolare tra Mario Rossi e molti Abbas. Poi un'altra cosa, un personaggio che veramente mi affascinava da molto tempo e che spesso non è diciamo così conosciuto in Italia, che sarebbe Jauhar al-Saqali. Cioè non molti italiani forse sanno che il fondatore del Cairo è uno che era nato in Sicilia ed è arrivato dall'Italia, quindi è già un pezzo, una catena, un anello in più nella catena che lega l'Italia all'Egitto, le nostre due storie millenarie. Quindi complimenti per lei, complimenti anche per il professor Francis Amin che è intervenuto prima, e grazie mille per la professoressa Reem Bassiouney che veramente ci onora con la sua presenza. Io poi sono particolarmente lieta, in quanto donna, in quanto italianista, trovare una romanziera egiziana contemporanea che tratta di questi argomenti nonostante la sua formazione in anglicistica. Quindi grazie ancora e mi auguro, e io ci lavorerò veramente di persona, per far conoscere di più i romanzi di dottoressa Reem al lettore e al pubblico italiano. Grazie mille e buon proseguimento a tutti. Grazie.
دكتور مروه، عايزه اشكرك جدا جدا على حضورك وعلى الكلام الجميل اللي قلتيه، وعلى ان انت فكرتيني بحاجه مهمه جدا، هو جوهر الصقلي في روايه الحلواني. روايه الحلواني ترجمت انجليزي، واتمنى جدا انها تترجم ايطالي يعني، اللي هي كسبت جائزه الشيخ زايد. وجوهر الصقلي جاي من صقلين، ويمكن احنا يعني ما نفكرش، بس جوهر الصقلي هو اللي بنى مدينه القاهره، وبنى مسجد الازهر، وبنى القصور الفاطميه في القاهره. فدي حاجة مهمة جدا ان احنا نشوف يعني مرة ثانية التواصل الثقافي اللي بين الناس، اللي دايما بيؤدي الى البناء، مش لازم يؤدي الى اي صراعات او اي حرب. فدي برضو سعيدة جدا ان انت ذكرتي جوهر الصقلي، ان هو بطل الحكاية الاولى في رواية الحلواني وهو الصقلي، ودي ترجمة الانجليزي لكن لسه بقى ان شاء الله.
شكرا جزيلا للدكتورة ريم وللدكتورة مروة. I will say just a few words in English because some of the people could not follow. Many thanks to Dr. Marwa for these words, because actually she reminds us about Jawhar al-Satalli, and it is a completely unknown figure in Italy today, but also even Mario Rossi, I mean, is not very known to the Italian audience, and many people in Italy don't know that there was an Italian architect working so much and with such a great, intense spiritual engagement and artistic engagement in his work here in Egypt. And so we have almost an agreement with Dr. Reem to start searching for translating this book into Italian, and we hope that Dr. Marwa will help us. We have to find a good editor, publisher, but this is an important thing to do for the next year. Inshallah. And now there is a question online. I'm sorry because I'm always mentioning friends, but this is Dr. Andrea Amato is one of my students in Bologna. Now he's a PhD scholar, and he has done a lot of things, but he's kind enough to continue following some of the things that we organize. So I would like to Andrea, buonasera. I don't know if you can speak directly, or I will read your question as you prefer.
As you want.
No, let us hear your voice. Okay. Thank you very much.
So I just want to, of course, I want to thank for this very interesting seminar. So I will just read the question I wrote in chat. So I want just to ask about the reception of the mysticism of Abbas outside the Mamluk Egypt, of course, if it's possible, of course. In your study, I just want to ask if you have found if Al-Nursi Sufism or maybe its cults also spread to other territories of the Darul Islam, especially in those territories in close contact with the Mamluks, such as, for example, the Golden Order. If just you find this information, I think maybe also in Battuta maybe there is other reference to these figures. Just curiosity, of course. Just want to thank again for your seminar presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's not very easy to listen, so I repeat shortly your question. The question is about the reception of the mysticism of Abu Abbas al-Mursi outside Egypt in the Mamluk period. Have you found whether al-Mursi's ideas spread to other territories of the Islam, especially those territories in contact with the Mamluks, such as the Golden Horde of the 14th century? Because I have to add that Dr. Andrea Amato is a specialist of the Golden Horde and the Mongolian history.
That's a very important question. So if you think about, let's go back to Sufism. What is Sufism? So Sufism started as a personal, individual endeavor of people who decided that they would like to purify themselves, that religion is not about material things, it's something that should be about yourself first and foremost. It's about love, and it's about making yourself a better person, then everyone else will be better eventually if everyone makes himself or herself a better person. So it started as a kind of individual idea, and then eventually there were some scholars who started to write books, and it's by books that people started to understand a little bit more. And then some scholars decided to teach, and so there were students surrounding teachers, and these students surrounding teachers started to spread the words of their teachers, and then become much more organized after a while. So at the time of Shadhili, who's the teacher of Abu Abbas al-Mursi, Sufism was already established. And it was established in both, in places like Uzbekistan, in places like Iran, nowadays Iran, and in sort of mid-Asia, as well as in the Middle East and North Africa. So it was already at that time spread, and again, it happened at the same time, but each one did it individually. So each person came from a different place and started teaching the books of these people. So the people there were 5 or 6 classic books, and everyone was teaching the same books. If that makes sense. Then they started writing their own. And so the Shadhili tariqa, as we say, or the Shadhili method, spread very much in Egypt, North Africa, and Syria, but it did not necessarily spread as much in mid-Asia. However, in mid-Asia there were other ways, like the Naqshbandis, for example. They spread there much more. Now the teaching itself at its core is the same. They may have different wordings for certain things, but at its core the teaching is all really the same. The main idea is the same throughout. But different teachers have different methods. But the core, as I said, is basically the same. So Abu Abbas al-Mursi was the student of Shadhili. Abu Abbas al-Mursi, as I said, was very self-effacing. So he would always cite his teacher. So he was told by one of his students, and by the way, the students are all buried there. So the place where the burial is for the students. The students would ask him, why don't you just, speak what you think? He would say that I can just cite my teacher. So he was very self-effacing. And we have some quotations that are by him, but he was mostly trying to teach what his teacher said before him. But Shadhili himself did not leave any book. And when asked why he's not writing any books, he said, my books are in the hearts of my students and my friends. So it's basically what he's trying to say is that I would rather teach people and make them feel or become better people than to actually write a book. And it's actually interesting for me as a professor, because you could see that some of the Sufi scholars were better teachers and others were better writers, which is something that we have until today, right, in our field. So Shadhili was a very good teacher, but Ibn Arabi would write more books. So again, we have a lot of disciples of Shadhili, but very few disciples of Ibn Arabi that we know about. But we have so many disciples of Shadhili, and the same with Abu Abbas. Very important scholars will come out of them. But we know Ibn Arabi from his own writing more than his students. So you can see that the scholar writes and the scholar who teaches, and what kind of difference it would make. So the legacy of Abu Abbas, of course, stayed in his very important scholar and student, which is worked on, Ibn Ata'Allah secondary. And you can tell us something about Ibn Ata'Allah, right? Who was one of the students of Abu Abbas.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reem, and thanks to Dr. Andrea. Actually, let me say something about Sheikh Natala Sarandari. He's the first one who wrote in the Shadili. Actually, he took the charge to write down the thoughts and the spiritual biography of the two masters, the two previous masters, Sheikh Abu Hassan Shadili and Sheikh Abu Hassan Mursi. And this gave him not only a priority within the Tariqah, to such an extent that people almost forgot about another great sheikh that was a disciple of Abu Hassan Mursi and his party beside him, Yakut al-Abbas al-Arshi, who was a great saintly figure but did not leave anything written. And actually, he was a former slave and probably was not even literate, but he was able to be a great disciple of Abu Abbas al-Mursi, and according to some traditions that go back to Al-Munawi, Abu Abbas wanted his daughter to marry Sheikh Yaqut al-Arshi. But the great writer was Ibn Abdullah al-Sakandari, and he's now one of the most sought for, most read Sufi authors until nowadays. And if I may add a personal note, it was the reason why I'm in Egypt now. Because the first time I came, it was just for a small period to study some books by Natala Sakandari for my thesis. And then I fell in love with Egypt and I tried to stay as long as I could. Okay, and apart from this, let's look at that. Great poet. And Dr. We have another question here.
Hi. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm an architect and I totally understand how Mario Rossi uses architecture to express love and passion and spirituality. And I think that was very powerful and you depicted it quite well. However, I'm also wondering from Abu Abbas' perspective, from somebody who's Sufi, who is more for humility, for asceticism and zuhd. I felt that he was quite passive in whatever you read today. And I'm wondering whether might be also a side of the story where there is a conflict where Abu Abbas says, well, I want to stay humble, I want to stay maybe under the shadows, and I don't need materialism to express spirituality. So maybe another dialogue in that sense might be also possible.
And the story is much more about exchanging their human experiences, especially exchanging their tragedies. Each one of them had their own tragedy and they had their own routine, and how did they deal with this? Now, the issue of building big mosques for Sufi sheikhs is a big issue. Not just for Abu Abbas, but actually for his teacher, Shadli. Now, did any of them ask for mosques to be built? No, not really. No, they didn't. So sometimes, again, the problem is that sometimes you have people asking, or people writing about Shazli and saying that Shazli has asked that this place should be secular, sacred, and things like that, which is totally nonsense, to be honest. And it's written much more after Shazli died, years and years after Shazli died. And I'm sure you heard those. So basically, they didn't ask for these buildings. However, I personally find these buildings extraordinarily important. Because having a building like this in Alexandria is a reminder for us of someone's life experience, his own experience as Abu Abbas al-Mursi, his own experience as a foreigner coming to Alexandria, but making such an impact that people decide that he is Alexandria. And also his personal journey, because he had a personal journey towards God and towards love and towards acceptance and towards dealing with issues that seems to him to be very unfair things like that. So I personally think buildings could be for us reminders, and it could be for us places that we feel, they overcome time, and they overcome ordeals, and they overcome pain. And I feel the same with Sultan Hassan Mosque, although it's for someone totally different, it's a sultan. But I feel like buildings can sometimes remind us of time and of the beauty of something that humans can create as well.
Thank you very much. There are another two questions. And yes.
Thank you very much. Actually, I want to refer to Sidi Ibn Atala Sakandari, the biggest or most important disciple of Mursi Abu Abbas. He has a beautiful mosque in Basatin, as we all know. Could it be that it is influenced, that the style of this beautiful mosque is influenced by Mario Rossi?
The mosque of Ibn Atala Secondary is actually quite recent, as Jibril was saying, it's in the 70s, and it's very strange that someone as Ibn Atala Secondary, did he not have a mosque before? I think he had just a small...
No, he had a small mosque, but actually in the beginning of the 70s, I don't remember if it is the 72, yes, Abdel Mahmoud wrote this, but there was a man, a merchant, who had a dream. And in this dream, he saw Abdullah al-Iskandari that was complaining because his town was neglected. And so he decided to build this beautiful mosque on the place where it was buried. The buried place was already visited, but it was not in a good state. And because also, as Reem was saying before, some were good theorists, and some were good preachers. And Sheikh Ibn Atala al-Iskandari, when he was alive, he was also a good preacher, but he was not seen as a big saintly figure. People not used to go and ask for his blessing at his town as they used to do with Sheikh Abu Abbas or Imam Shafi or other great figures. So he is more of an intellectual. But this is considered, this dream, one of the miracles of Sheikh Abu Abbas Ibn Atala al-Sakandari. I'm not an expert in history or architecture, but if I may express an opinion, this mosque is not in any connection with the mosque built by Mario Rossi and Abu Abbas. It's a different style. So, by the way, there is another architect online, and I was waiting for her questions, but she didn't give us any questions, Dr. Dina Mahfoum, so I just take the opportunity to greet another great friend of the Italian Archaeological Center. If you want to enter the floor, of course, Dina, you are most welcome. And also let me thank Buonasera.
Thank you, this is very interesting. I don't have questions, but it's been very interesting to listen to this talk by Dr. Reem, and all the questions coming, bring a lot of thoughts, definitely about that we research about, which for me also I feel the connections with people I've been researching for example, like the members of the Comité de Conservation des Monuments de l'Art Arabe, and I think by reading what they have written, by looking at the drawings they have done, by looking at the photographs some of them have done, you really feel that you know them very well. So yeah, I leave the rest of the people in presence to ask, but thank you very much, both of you. Really, thanks.
Many thanks, Dr. Dina, and also let me thank Professor Barbara Baric, who is a historic figure in the field of Italian Egyptian archaeology. She has been the director for many years of the missions in the oasis of Farafra, and now her disciple, Dr. Giulio Lucarini, has taken this charge, but she's still a very influential figure and a very admired figure, and we are honored to have her with us, even if only online. Thank you very much. Reem, if you want to answer to Dina or anything.
Thank you so much, Dina and Professor Barbara. It's really wonderful to have you listen to my talk today, and it's really a big pleasure. And to answer Nadia's question about anecdotes, Abu Abbas stayed at Alexandria according to his student at the time that his student was writing. It was 36 years, but he actually stayed at Alexandria for 42 years until his death. And his student was saying for the 36 years that until he wrote about his professor, my teacher, Abu Abbas, did not meet the governor of Alexandria or any governor at all. So whenever a governor would want to go and meet Abu Abbas al-Morsi, Abu Abbas al-Morsi would pack his bag and leave the city before dawn. And it was a very famous case when he did that when he was in the south of Egypt. And his student asked him, well, why? Why is it? And he said, I'm not to be manipulated. So it's a very famous, it's a very famous quote by Abu Abbas al-Morsi. So this shows you how self-effacing he was. He was not into politics. He was not into any kind of, showing himself.
Thank you very much. And I don't know if there are other questions. Otherwise, we can move to the other room because we have some refreshments. But really, I would like to thank each of you personally. If it is not possible, we thank all of you, and I hope to see you on other occasions for our future lectures. Thank you very much.